Hey, Bistro fans, Jill here. I am joined by lovely Dr. Cole with Advanced Animal Chiropractic. Welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, back at another Monday night Chiro chat. So awesome. I'm so glad you're here. We've had tons of customers, new customers, phone calls, people asking about chiropractic care and how they can get an appointment and how it might help their pet. So I think a lot more people are at home with coronavirus and working from home, that they've been out exercising their pets more and maybe noticed that their dog's gait is off or injuries are happening. So I'm so glad you're with us tonight.
Happy to be helpful.
Yeah. All right. So we've kind of gone over advanced animal chiropractic. So if you're new to joining our Chiro chat, the last couple chiropractic videos, we've gone over kind of your certifications and what we've done. So how long have you been practicing chiropractic with animals only?
6 years now.
I know, isn't that crazy?
It's really weird to think about that. But yeah, 6 years. Good old 2014 is when it all started.
That's wild. And prior to that, you were working with humans out of a chiropractic office, correct?
Correct.
And then now your practice is all animals. So what are some of the animals? Because I know more than just cats and dogs have spines and people. So what other animals have you adjusted in your practice?
We have worked on show steers, horses, cows, goats, pigs, guinea pigs, and squirrels, and bunnies.
The random trash panda. Can't forget about him.
Oh yeah, a raccoon.
Big nugget.
A little tiny itty bitty one. And I'm trying to think. I worked on a bird once, but that was I think someone had hit it. So we were trying to see if we could help it. But I think that might cover it. I can't think if I'm missing anything. But yeah, a giant realm of that. Oh, and horses, obviously. So like a little bit of everything.
Good. And I know Dr. Grant mainly does the horses, but he does visit a couple horse barns throughout the week. And that is, obviously, we don't have horses show up the pet bistro for adjustments. So you mainly see cats and dogs out of our store and a lot of your other locations. But so that is part of your everyday. All right, so it looks like Megan's joining us. She says hello. Anybody else, if you're here joining us, give us a quick hi. Let us know you're here. So we're going to continue a little bit more with knee issues. So last week we talked about more or less different surgeries, TPLOs and CCLs, right? CCLs that go along that we see more common with our cat and dogs. But we also have other knee problems that can be affecting them, which chiropractic might be helpful. So take it away. We have some good stuff to talk about.
So I'm mainly going to focus on luxating patella tonight, just because that is such a common condition in all breeds. But so what it is where it's a fancy name for a floating kneecap. So imagine your kneecap popping in and out of joint. So in animals, there is a groove at the bottom of their femur that basically cradles the kneecap right in there. And then you've got all the musculature around it that kind of acts as a basket as well. And what happens with luxating patella is that when they extend their leg, the kneecap will pop out of socket. So it kind of floats in and out. The reason it happens is because the groove, like the basket that it's being held in, is too shallow. So it just pops in and out, no problemo. Now, that sounds awful and like it would be super duper painful, but it really isn't all that bad. It's kind of a case dependent thing. So first off, the dogs most prone to it are small dogs, small toy breed dogs. It's very, very common. I mean, I would say that's probably the majority of luxating patella that comes in are all the tiny little fluffy things that are about this big. The other thing is it's kind of become more common in the bully breeds and sometimes in like the Huskies Sometimes a golden retriever will have it now and then, but you don't see it all that often. And then such things as like the Malamutes and that sort of stuff as well. So it kind of ranges all over the place, but you don't really see it all that often in mixed breeds. And I don't know if that's just a genetic component, but for the most part, it's purebred small dogs. Now, most of the time, it's a genetic thing, and it usually is something that happens early on in life, and it's not something that the owner can really prevent. Like, there's nothing that you should have done, could have done to stop the patella from ending up being a luxating patella. That you really have no control of it. When it happens, maybe that initial first time that it pops out, you might hear a yipe, you might see a limp, or that sort of thing. But most owners don't even have a clue their dog has it until later in life, or when they notice their dog is limping fairly frequently, or that they skip. And a lot of times people will think their dogs just have like a really funny and cute gait. But for the most part, if you see a little dog and they're walking along and every now and then they just hike up that one of their back legs or have like a little skip to their step, more likely than not, they have a kneecap that's popping in and out, and their body is trying to pop it back into place. So there are 4 different grades, or 4 different ways that they're classified, ranging from a grade 1 to a grade 4. Grade 1 is very minor. Grade 1, most of the time, they can pop it back in and out all on their own, whereas a grade 4 is a bit more severe, and that tends to be when the patella is actually stuck outside of the socket. And it's one of those things where it's kind of tough to classify because a lot of dogs will kind of be in the in-between too. What I would say, the majority of what Grant and I see in practice that are able to avoid going a more drastic surgical route tend to be your grade 1 to 3s. Most of the time, if we've ever had a bad grade 4 that needs to kind of look into the standard option of going and having surgery done, that tends to be in the bigger breeds as well. The little guys tend to be able to handle it even if they do have a grade 4. So it's, again, kind of case dependent. I would say when it comes to surgery for this, it's kind of similar to the CCL in that there's no rush. It's not something that needs to be done right away. And in truth, I would say it's probably one of those conditions that very rarely needs to go a surgical route. It's super easy to manage with supplementation, with chiropractic, with massage, with just exercises and making sure the muscle tone is strong so it kind of manages the situation at hand. We've shown a lot of our owners, especially if they have a dog that just has a grade 1 or grade 2, how to just extend the leg and pop the kneecap back in case it ever does get stuck out. But for the most part, what people need to understand about luxating patella is that it's non-painful most of the time. I mean, the only time I've ever seen a dog that has pain with it is if they've got a lot of arthritis in that joint as well. That can be a little bit aggravating. Or, like I talked about last week, a lot of times a predisposing factor to dogs that have CCL injuries is a luxating patella. So this floating kneecap destabilizes the knee. Depending on the grade, it kind of determines how destabilized you are. But this is also something that can be totally managed because you've got all those quadriceps muscles all around it that are basically helping cradle it and keep it where it needs to be. If you have a very meaty, muscly dog and you can keep those muscles nice and strong, it really helps keep things in line. So that way you're not worrying about this thing popping in and out and aggravating the knee all the time. Very rarely do we see young dogs that come in that have severe complications from it. Most of the time it's just an annoyance. And it's more or less the owner saying, well, something's wrong with my dog's gait and I'm not quite sure what it is. But again, totally manageable. I would say that most of the time, if a dog has it on one leg, they probably have it on both. It's not always certain that way, but I would say probably 75% of the time, if you've got a dog with one knee that's luxating, most likely the other one will as well. And that's probably just that genetic component of it. And again, totally manageable. It's really one of those things with chiropractic. The goal is to just make sure, again, you're keeping that knee as stable as possible and kind of and helping the hips stay mobile so that while they're compensating for it popping in and out, you're not having a lot of issues. But it's a super, super common condition. And like we kind of talked about, it's most people don't even know it exists until late in life. I mean, we've had dogs come in that are teens that clearly their kneecaps pop in and out all the time, and it doesn't bother them at all. And they're really no worse for the wear. The only thing that I would say that you get complications from is years and years and years of that kneecap popping in and out can cause a little bit of friction on that joint. So you might have a little bit of arthritis earlier in life than not, but that's okay. It's, again, manageable. We can deal with that with like a good anti-inflammatory diet and cooling foods and that sort of thing. I would say some of the most common breeds that are little that get it would be your Dachshunds, your Maltese, your Maltipoos, your Shih Tzus. That kind of thing is really, really common. It's easy to diagnose usually just by feeling the back legs, but occasionally folks will go and get an x-ray and you can actually see the knee is luxated out of place. Or you'll see a lot of arthritis in that joint, indicating that clearly it has been popping in and out, and that's causing issues as well. And basically, like I said, what the surgical route is to fix it, which isn't always successful. And by that, I mean, it's not super successful. It's kind of a hit or miss thing. They really just go in and create more of a crater for the kneecap to sit in and hope that it stays in line, but it doesn't always work that way. So yeah, it's a really common condition. We see it often, but with exercise, with good supplementation and that sort of thing, it can be totally manageable.
Have you ever seen it in cats? Is that something that happens?
So it's not really common, kind of TCL, because I think they've got a different angle back there, but we have seen it in 2 different cats. So it's very bizarre. And it has been in purebred cats. So I think that has something to do with it too. Sometimes it gets passed along, whereas just the rescue mutt cats that you get, not super common. I want to say both of them were ragdolls. So it just kind of depends on the animal. But a lot of times when you see a cat with a limp, it's not common, like to see your cat limping. So I would say that if you see something, there probably is something going on, whether it is a cruciate injury or a luxating patella or they've strained something. But they're such agile creatures that, you know, knee injuries aren't super common in cats.
Yeah, I would say the other breed that, you know, all the breeds that you mentioned too, they kind of have a funny gait, like their legs are bowed, or they kind of have a funny gait to them, which totally explains there's probably some more pressure at the knees, which causes some of that. Pomeranians are the other one that it tends to happen to. We have customers that come in and from a chiropractic standpoint, how often would a dog need to be adjusted that has a luxating patella?
So it kind of ranges, but I would say just as a general guideline, what we normally do with depending on the severity when they come in, if they're pretty frequently popping in and out and they've lost a lot of muscle tone, most of those dogs we see at least once a week for about 4 weeks to kind of get them back on track. And then during that time, we start integrating some exercises too to really help strengthen the back end. This is one of those conditions that, above all else, muscle tone and strength, I would say, is one of the most important things, because you could have the best supplementation in the world and you could have me working on your dog all the time, but if you don't have the muscle tone to help keep things in place, it's a losing battle. It just will keep popping out. So that's why the rehab on that side is so important, just because it does help to keep everything where it needs to be. And if it does pop out, when you have that bulky muscle tone and that strength back there, it is easier to right it on their own. So it's not so owner dependent as much as it would be if you have like a jello tone of a muscle.
Right. Now, I don't know if you know the answer to this, but if there has been a luxating patella and there's a TPLO or CCL surgery, does that usually rectify that problem, or could a pet still have the luxating patellas?
Not usually, unless they go in knowing that that's what caused it, which I would assume you'd probably know. Although in x-ray, unless the kneecap is actually out of socket, you're not going to see it. You'd have to have like that actual palpatory exam, but that's obviously pretty common any hoosers. So I would say most of the vets would know. But doing both of those surgeries at the same time is highly unlikely. I would say if it's that severe, what they'd probably do is the patellar surgery after they would do the CCL surgery. It's too, you kind of have, it would totally destabilize the knee, right? So you kind of have to pick and choose which one you'd want to address first. I have had clients that have had the luxating patella in a bully breed that ended up causing a lot of cruciate issues that also injured their meniscus. So it was like a terrible 3 kind of situation.
Sure.
And they fixed the cruciate and the meniscus at the same time, and then went back later and took care of the patella just because it was so bad. And some of these bully breeds, you see how they walk like these little knee heads, and they do have super strong muscles. So one would think they wouldn't be as affected by the luxating patella, but I would say for the worst ones I've seen have all been in bully breeds. I don't know if it's just because they're so meaty and they're so bow-legged that there's a more like a likelihood that it gets luxated out of socket, but it's definitely one of those things that can be painful because it can be so tight that they're unable to actually get it into socket. So imagine walking around all day with your kneecap on the inside of your knee, and then, you've got everything else moving where it should be. So that can be a little bit uncomfortable. And I would say they've had it done. Actually, luxating patella is super common in horses too. We see it a lot. But their kneecap is so tiny in with respect to their giant back leg that it really doesn't cause as much of an issue. And the other neat thing is that in horses, the kneecap usually luxates in a different direction than with dogs. So most dogs, the kneecap will luxate or will float inward. So it'll float towards each other. So if you've got 2 knees, they go this way, as opposed to horses, they tend to luxate outwardly. So it's just got to do with the way their muscles are strapped all along back there and the way they're situated. But most of the time with horses, it really doesn't cause much of an issue with them at all. Pretty similar to dogs, but you don't really get a lot of limping, and it's just because their entire biomechanics is a little bit different. And if you look at a horse, they're way more meaty than our dogs are. Even just if you proportionally, like, they still have a lot more meat back there. So they are able to manage like this tiny little clementine sized kneecap as opposed to our dogs. I mean, their kneecaps are small, but proportionally they'd still have a much bigger one than compared to a horse. So it's interesting for sure, but I would say the ones that are most affected are definitely the bully breeds, with ones that are hard to manage on your own, that you may end up having to go a more conventional route with it. But little guys, it's so dang common. And it's funny, you'd think that it would kind of have like bred itself out by now, but I feel like it's just getting more common with these little dogs. And I don't know why. There's got to be some reason to it, but who knows?
Yeah. And then you're making me think now too with Poppy. I don't know if you've ever checked her kneecap, just because when she was 7 months old, she had the broken leg at the growth plate, and we ended up having a second surgery because she had so much atrophy that when she healed, the muscles pulled her kneecap out. So we had a second surgery to put the kneecap back. So I do wonder, I will have to check her out, because that makes me wonder if, and she kind of runs with a funny giddy up, which that to me is expected with a surgery, and there's probably a little bit of inflammation and arthritis, and which is something that we knew would happen. So
yeah,
that makes me wonder if she also maybe deals with that on occasion, especially with Rinjani chasing her through the house. So
could be. I never know.
So you had made mention that after usually a couple appointments that you also have recommended exercises to go along with for owners to work with their dog with luxating patellas. So what are some of those things that you usually recommend for exercises?
So they're super simple. They're all targeting your quadriceps or the dog's quadriceps. So one of the easiest ones, and we do this with our CCL dogs too, is just to sit to stand. It engages all of those quads. And if you have a food motivated pup, it's really, really simple to just take a cookie, have them sit, and then walk towards you, stand up. Doing a couple reps of those a couple times a day can be really helpful. The other thing that can be super helpful is stairs. And I know a lot of people like to avoid stairs when they see their dogs limping, but if it's really just a luxating patella, doing the stairs up and down a couple times a day can be super helpful. It engages the same dang muscles and can keep them really nice and meaty. If you don't have stairs, I would suggest finding a hill somewhere near you that you can have them walk up and then walk down. And if you want to get creative, you can do zigzags up and down too. Movement like that is really good to help target all those different little muscle groups. Another one that's a little bit more tough for people to teach their pet is an army crawl. So think about when your puppy is like on the ground and they just kind of slink towards you. That's kind of what we want to teach. So a lot of times, again, if you have a food motivated or toy motivated dog, take whatever they really, really like and put them in a down, and then keep that cookie down there and have them bring it slowly towards you at that level. And a lot of times it'll teach them to crawl. That's a little bit more targeted and it's a tougher one to master, but that can be really good for them as well. If you are creative, you can do something called cavalettis, which a lot of folks, you've probably seen them in dog shows. It's just like the poles that your dog will jump over or walk over. Kind of like same thing with horse shows. You see horses jumping over cavalettis. So what we'll oftentimes tell people do, you can use whatever you have at home, something to step over. But if you've got a broom or two things you can set it up on to make them actually step over it, if you have that across your yard for a couple steps, that can be really helpful too, because it forces them to lift that leg a lot higher than they might normally do. And the same thing, it like engages the hip a little bit more as well. So that gets after some of that pelvic girdle. And the last thing, which most folks don't have in their backyard, is underwater treadmill is really, really, really good. So any kind of hydrotherapy is fabulous. I always tell people, if you don't have access to that, use your tub. If your dog is okay with water, it's one of the best things you can do. Put them in the tub, get them paddling back there. Anything like that is really helpful as well. And then once they get strong enough, I mean, truly walking your dog is one of the best things you can do for them to just keep the strength up back there. That being said, don't let them take off going like a crazy dog. Slow walks are the best way to make sure your dog uses their leg properly. Now, when you do that, you might notice that they're limping more. That's okay. It means that they're actually forcing themselves to use that instead of cheating. So dogs are smart. They're going to cheat on you anytime they can. When you're walking, they're just going to pick up momentum and go. And a lot of times that involves like either just toe tapping or not really using that foot. If you're forcing them to go on a nice slow walk, they're going to have to use that leg. And that in itself can be really good at just keeping all that muscle tone really nice and strong.
So would you recommend with the walks, would you recommend shorter walks multiple times a day, or would you recommend a longer walk?
So in the beginning, always the short walks multiple times a day. Don't care if it's the summer, the winter, anytime. It's just better for them. You're really going out with a full gas tank both times, anytime you go out for a walk, as opposed to setting out and intending to do a 4-mile walk, which you may do, no problem, and your dog may want to do that. But if they run out of steam at about 2 miles, that's a lot to ask of them, and that's a lot of cheating that they're going to do, and you're going to have a really sore and uncomfortable pet by the time you get home. And a lot of times when folks do that, that's when we have the day or two after where they're a lot worse because they've overdone it. Whereas if you instead split that into either 2 walks, or I probably wouldn't recommend 4 miles for a luxating patella dog anyway, but if you did, split your normal into 2 at least. If you can do 3, then great. But that way you're at least giving them a chance to recoup during the day. So that way when you go back out again, they have the energy, they have the wherewithal to do it. It's like a human. I mean, if you ran for 2 miles in the morning and 2 miles at night, it's a lot easier than doing 4 miles all at one time. So it can be a lot more beneficial for your pet. You just kind of have to be cognizant of that and make the time to do it. So that's what I would say. For sure, splitting it up is good. Starting out with slow, shorter ones is best. And then they develop muscle tone really, really fast. So it's not like a human where you have to wait months to necessarily see results, or at least with a female, you have to wait months to see results. With dudes, they can sneeze and they're fine. But with that sort of thing, animals recover their muscle tone and their strength pretty fast. So even within the first 1 to 2 weeks, you can usually start extending that, even if it's just by 5 minutes or so at a time, to kind of help that out. But yeah, super simple, easy things we can all do at home to help manage it.
That's awesome. Yeah, all those exercises sound super doable and easy once the owner gets used to it or finds a routine. So
Yeah.
great advice. And do you have any supplement recommendations that might help a dog or cat that has a luxating patella?
Sure. So anything, well, you know how I feel about collagen. This is one of those conditions where collagen is the most important thing. It helps cradle, it helps support, it helps maintain. It is so important. So if your dog is not synthesizing or your cat isn't synthesizing collagen on its own, get some collagen. There's a lot of other things you can get in order to help support your dog or your cat create more of their own and actually promote it. You've got your vitamin C, your vitamin B, there's, glucosamine, MSM, all of these things, they target the same thing. So you can't really go wrong, but this is one of those conditions where I would say above all things, if you can get them on a great collagen supplement, and this will be for a lifetime because luxating patella isn't going to go away. It's really, really manageable and it helps so much long-term. The other thing we love is obviously fish oil. Your fish oils are really good. They're really nice anti-inflammatory. It's a natural anti-inflammatory. You can always do a turmeric too, but a lot of times pets prefer the fish oil just because it's not quite as potent as the turmeric is, unless you get it in like a bite form. But it's a simple one ingredient sort of situation. So both of those are really, really awesome. But I would do that before I'd load them up on, you could load your dog up on like 8 or 9 different supplements, but I like to consider the collagen as like a one-stop shop. So it kind of handles the important thing that you need for that specific condition. And then obviously any food that you can feed that is really pro anti-inflammatory. So anything that's not an inflaming food, anything that's cooling, a cooling diet's really important. Anything that's not got grain, because carbs, all of that's just going to flare everything up. So anything that can just keep their body at the lowest inflammatory level possible is really, really important. And a lot of those foods, those natural diets contain a lot of those vitamins that they need anyway. So you wouldn't have to spend so much money and so much time trying to figure out what is missing from your pet's equation, as opposed to if you're not feeding a food that's, grain-free or raw or anything like that, you've got a little bit more work for you. And it ends up being a little bit more expensive because you have to buy all these things to supplement. A lot of folks will think, well, I feed salmon, so I don't need fish oil, but that's not the case at all. Like, it's a very different level of what you might need. I mean, you might need a little bit more concentration of the actual fish oil to help and to provide that anti-inflammatory benefit, as opposed to just eating salmon. I mean, I take a fish oil pill and I eat fish all the time. So it's just a different concentration of those things. And oftentimes it's a different fish oil that you need. Sometimes the salmon oil isn't what you need. Sometimes you need a cod liver. There's all sorts of different options. So you've got a lot of really good options, but I would say those are my top for sure supplements that I always tell anybody that those are what you really need to get into if you have a dog with luxating patella.
Yeah. So, and we carry most of the supplements, different forms, different varieties of supplementation. So we have collagen in both a powder, and then we can also find it in our fantastic bone broth. So Primal has a really nice gelatinous, thick bone broth, which is excellent. We do have turmeric options or golden paste options. Which the one thing that like popped in my head that I think would be excellent for a situation like that is our Colorado hemp honey. So it's honey infused with CBD or full spectrum hemp, which also has turmeric and black pepper mixed into it. So it's kind of like a nice all-in-one supplement. And you're so right about food. So many times, people will think that food has enough omegas or enough glucosamine, but it's not. It's just enough to maybe help or see improvement. It's not really a therapeutic amount. So getting that a little bit extra on board and bumping it up can really make a huge difference in joint health and movement, mobility, improving like hind end stiffness or weakness. So all of those things can be really helpful. And the one thing that totally jumps in my mind for luxating patellas, because a lot of times it's an elasticity issue. So that knee keeps moving and then that elastic kind of loosens is number 1 cell salt calc fluor. So that is a homeopathic that is often used to improve elasticity in the body. So not that I expect you to know your cell salts and your homeopathics off the top of your head. So that is probably one of my favorites to get on board. And it's super inexpensive too. So it's easy to try to see if it helps and go from there.
Totally.
Yeah. All right. Anything else that you think we've missed about luxating patellas tonight?
I think we've covered our ground.
I think we did. So tell us a little bit about your appointments, how they work, and the cost of them.
Sure. So our initial exam and adjustment is $90. That's usually between 20 and 30 minutes. It's a full chiropractic exam. So we check out, the gait, we check out muscle tone, we do a full palpatory assessment, and you get an adjustment obviously that day as well. Follow-ups are roughly 10 to 15 minutes. Those run 55, and we are at Pet Bistro 3 to 4 days a week. Now that you guys are open a little bit later, we're there a little bit later as well. So every Tuesday and Thursday evening, we're there from at least 4 to 7. We've been expanding a lot lately, so it tends to be more like 2:30 to 7. And then Grant's there on Wednesdays as well from 10 to 1. And then I think this actually might be our Saturday with you guys too. So Grant will be there this Saturday, I believe, from 10 to 1 as well. So we're there every week. It's easy to make an appointment with you guys. You can either call the store, or if you're mobile friendly, hop on your computer and go on your guys' website. You can easily do it that way too.
Yep. So if you just go to thepetbistro.com, we do have book an appointment button at the bottom. So you just scroll to the bottom of our website. There's book an appointment. You click on that. You select either if it's an initial or a follow-up, and then it'll just prompt you through, select either Dr. Cole or Dr. Grant. It'll show you the availability that they have as well. And then also I just wanted to make mention too, because a lot of people think chiropractic, if you've been to a chiropractor yourself, most of the time you're laying on a table and they, ask you to move in different ways to make spinal adjustments, where your pets are on the floor. They have all 4 feet on the floor. There's no loud noises, cracking, popping, things of that nature. Most dogs and cats actually stand there, and I think they really appreciate it, and they do really well with it. So I think some animals know that it makes them feel better, so they look forward to the appointment and seeing both you or Grant to help with their health. So
they're pretty intuitive. I would agree with you. We have a lot of times when folks will say normally they're aggressive or normally they're very fearful, and a lot of times these pets are just very calm, and they just kind of know that you're there to help.
Yeah.
So that's kind of nice.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you guys have any questions, if anyone has any questions, please reach out to us at the store, 248-548-3448. Pretty much everyone on staff almost has had their pet adjusted. So, and we can tell you our experience. If you have questions, things that besides knee issues that chiropractic can help with, great for senior dogs, senior cats, just overall health and wellness. There's so many benefits to chiropractic. So let's see here. We have one quick, Megan just mentioned, it's interesting that she had no idea horses could have also luxating patellas. So good conversation for tonight.
Yeah.
So anything else to add, or we're good for today with luxating patellas?
I think we're good for today, but next week we're going to talk about hip dysplasia. So I know that's a huge thing for a lot of dog owners of all breeds, sizes, ages, everything. So if you've ever had questions about it, shoot them over to either Jill or myself, and we can make sure we get them addressed. Yeah, absolutely. So join us again next Monday, 7:30, same time, same place. And I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their Monday. Yeah.